Quite a few here are married couples, and some of you may have had the first reading read at your nuptial mass. It's one of the favourites, and it's a matter for commenting on for the one who celebrates. Word by word, one can open it and ask, how is this going to work out in this couple? Remember now, the marriage vows are heard on high, and at the end of our life we are examined on specifically our state of life. There is a sanctity required of each state of life. Yours is not mine, and mine is not yours. But yours is there if you're married. And these words, heard by the angels and by your Creator, are serious. To love and to cherish, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, richer or poorer, until death do us part. It starts well usually, but then at one point, usually there's a point of tension at the first big argument. And a mature couple will get over it. An immature one will not. And now we have a lot of immature couples. I think you know what I mean. It's not that different, my friends, from life in a monastery. Just this week I was writing to a friend who would have been here in the past, who's now enclosed in a monastery, and by now in first vows, at least. And I was just drawing a picture to help her along. It was an aquarium with goldfish inside, and each goldfish had a huge big mouth and big teeth with the Colgate ring of confidence surrounding these teeth. But each one was practicing heroic charity, and the smile was that heroic smile of Thérèse of Lisieux. You will remember that years later, she, this nun who had the gift of annoying her in everything, asked, having written an article, Memories of a Cherished Friendship, but who on earth was that nun who annoyed her in everything? I believe it was the chaplain who looked her in the eyes and said, Ma sœur, c'était vous. What? That was heroic charity. That smile hid much pain on the part of Thérèse. That's not noisy, it's only seen by the angels. I remain for a few seconds in the ambit of the aquarium because, as I say, it concerns each of us here. I remember how in community in Italy, the French community, there were ways and means of making charity felt. We were going through great moments together. One was the fact that being all young, because they were all younger than I was except the founding prior, now dead, we were able, a small band that we were, wherever we went, and we were sometimes called to sing outside the monastery, e.g. in a cathedral, even in Venice, in the Duomo, we had this gift from the Lord. All we had to do was open our mouth and we could create beauty. It just happened also we had one of the most beautiful churches in Italy with a fantastic acoustic. So it all happened for us. Deus, 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 Naditorium, Torium, Torium, and on it went. And add to that we knew how to make it work with clouds of incense and French-style gestuality, and we were away. Add to that the fact that we had a great organist on a Sunday and an oboist, and we could pull tears out of people's eyes by creating beauty on earth. You could see them at communion, all ages, crying. We'd have bits like this being used. That bit of, isn't it Morricone, the flute from the Mission? It's very moving. All that to say that therefore we had something in our hands from God which we knew was powerful. We were together and had to be together as a band. It's rather like the Beatles. They had to be together. Afterwards they were a disaster. Together. Together! And the devil knew it. He didn't like this together business. The word devil means divider, the otherness. So he was powerful. He was going to ruin this. But I remember, nevertheless, that grace could break through powerfully. One after the other, we were being ordained. And I remember after Frère Dominique was ordained, my next-door neighbour, I pounced on him that evening at Compline in chapel in the church at the moment of the rosary in silence before the Blessed Virgin. Could you hear my confession? I wanted the first. And he did. A few months later, I was ordained, and he did the same. Could you hear my confession? I hardly knew it by memory, but I did. These were graces. And then, about a year later, we were in Rome, and he was sleeping on the ground in a sleeping bag in my room at the university, and I was in bed, and I was to defend my doctoral thesis. And he woke up the following morning, before we were going to say matins in Latin together. He said to me in French, "T'as défendu ta thèse pendant la nuit." You defended your thesis in the night. I was talking in my sleep, the tension was so high. So that was what we were living through. And then things would happen in the monastery. I remember that every year we would welcome a group of ex-drug addicts being healed in the community at Como, the Arca, the Ark. And there were girls, but we had to get through to them. There were ways and means. But I remember one evening we were there. The guest house was on the hill, it was the old monastery itself, and there we would have an evening together with these girls before they went away. And I remember that there wasn't enough room to sit. All the chairs and seating places, rocks, whatever we had outside were full of human beings. So I sat on the knee of Frère Dominique and rather like a child put my arms around him, and they happened to capture that in a picture. And I can tell you that that picture spoke volumes to them, far more than any sermon they heard in church. Why? It's a language that was understood by all and sundry, especially sundry. Love, charity, joy in the Lord. That's what functions, my friends. It applies to you as well. You can go into a family or into a monastery and you can feel the atmosphere. Is there warmth or heaviness in this place? I mentioned old Nick. Right now, he's doing something similar on a larger scale. The aquarium of the life of the church itself. Divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. Listen to this. This came out in 1975. How the devil is destroying the life of the church. Now this is only 1975. What would he have to say now for himself? It's in the series of exorcisms in Germany, Annalisa, and it's the real thing. It's on tape, you can hear it. It's actually on YouTube, although in German. And for our good, this poor young Catholic girl was allowed to be possessed so that we could hear what's going on from the horse's mouth. In this case of very severe possession, there were also human demons present, and they had to give their name, most of them. Judas was there, and he started to indicate how it got there, had to, and how he was actually still at it where he was out of pure hatred. He pointed out mockingly that no priest was wearing what that exorcist was wearing, the soutane, the The devil hates the Sultan. He went on mockingly to indicate how nuns were spending their time before the television. I preached that at Dock one day in the Blessed Sacrament Chapel at a retreat I was giving years ago, and a nun walked out. They don't pray enough, and they don't kneel. They put out their paws. You know what that means, don't you? All of them do this. From bishop to parish priest, they give it in their paws. He goes on. In his courteous way, he goes on to say how beastly thick priests are. They're all goaded on, of course. And he admits it. Yes, they're pushing from down under. Even before that thing, you know what he means? He won't say it, he can't say it. They sit rather than adore. Do you know that more than once I've gone into a place of adoration of the Blessed Sacrament, exposed, and I found right before it the official adorers of that hour chatting away to each other, insulting the one they're there for. A thorn in the Sacred Heart they're there to console. He goes on. The altar rails. Got rid of them all. The rosary. Jettisoned. Sunday in bed. What a great victory. It's helped, of course, by Saturday evening. Wait for it. You wouldn't believe this, but the great divine Nero comes on board also, and he has a word or two to say about even things in church. The altar turned towards the people. In German that's called the Volksaltar. Comes from our side. Of this, we are responsible. And he goes on, they, the Catholics, have run after the evangelicals like harlots by order of his own boss. And he goes on, Catholics have the true doctrine, that's an interesting admission from down under, and are running after the Protestants like prostitutes. The Catholics are throwing the doctrine of the truth to the pigs. Let them eat it. Interesting. Wait for this bit. Synods! Synods! The devil laughs. There, one goes on chatting. The bishops know what they should do. They would not need synods if they followed the Pope. Now, we're here under Paul VI still, the mid-70s. But for them, the Pope is an imbecile. They, bishops, let people receive that thing in their hand. And you know, of course, that at this time, this is the very thing that was changing. It was pressurized, it was forced upon Paul VI, and he gave this document which indicated it should be limited, and he was trying to limit the fact that it was happening already as a fait accompli out of disobedience. But that document that he gave indicated his displeasure. And it was repeated by John Paul II. And Ratzinger, Pope Benedict, in his gentle way, dropped a clanging hint. No one would receive it from him unless it was on the tongue and kneeling. I just conclude with Ratzinger, Pope Benedict, because I'm reading now lots of things about him, including Georg Genswein's memoirs, the inside story of working with Ratzinger. Also Gerhard Müller. It's all in Latin, in Italian, but it's the inside story. Do you know that when the young Georg Genswein was in Rome, he got a shock. He had this message sent to him by the Pope. He wanted to see him. He cringed because he thought he'd done something naughty. You know that when he was a young man, he used to imitate the Rolling Stones with hairstyle, and he was a great fan of the Beatles, so he thought maybe the Pope had something to say. On the contrary, he got to his office. Actually, he wasn't Pope yet, he was only the head of the CDF, but he was big enough. And Ratzinger had a big smile. He was pleased with him and had noticed him and wanted to humbly ask him a favour. Would he be his private secretary? And it was the most bonded and trusting and loving and serene relationship that you could imagine for years until the death of the ex-pontiff a few weeks ago. It's very interesting how souls in Jesus bond. And also he had this to say, that he was glad to be moved from the office where he was working into that place where the CDF was working, because everything, not that the other wasn't the case, but this place was particularly peaceful. A great peace and well-being and good feeling was everywhere in the whole of the CDF, because Ratzinger was at its head, and all the staff were 100% behind him and bonded. That's true service of the Lord. I conclude, my friends, if that's not the case in this place or another, I mean in general, you know why. Let's not play the devil's game. Remember the first reading and live it. I'll just share this with you. Ad Majestatem, I wrote this when still young at monastery. How great it was to be orientated towards the majesty. We used to use that in choir, that expression. Now the choir is turned together ad majestatem. There were moments we looked towards the high altar, which by the way we used because the high altar facing the other way with incense. It was going together towards something greater. And one day a friend of ours was going to a conference presided over by, who was then Pope already, Ratzinger, and gave her a message from our monastery. It was this. She knew the monastery and she wanted the Holy Father to know, in this monastery they live what you want, what is called the hermeneutic of continuity. The fullness of the old and the fullness of the new in calm and serene symbiosis. That's the way to handle it, my friends. Not entrenchment, not factions, not violence, not unpleasant blogging, but charity in the house of the Lord.
Et in unum Dominum Iesum Christum et conspiciam